Thank you, Michael. I would like to extend my appreciation to the Moya University for this opportunity to share this presentation, with special mention to our technical assistants, which, yes, Mr. Mike, he's always there for us, BL and Rose. And of course, all of you who have taken your valuable time to participate. When I look out over world events, it becomes very clear to me that the modern esotericist needs to align themselves more deeply with soul levels and to gain as much information as they can about where they are on the path and maybe what the next step is, because that is what's going to insulate you from the craziness of world events and what we're all enduring right now. So again, thank you for coming. I'm going to start with a few quick quotes by DK that you've all been exposed to. So I'm just going to quickly go over them. DK talking about the idea that next century there's going to be a new and more adequate teaching. And I have the confidence that all of you, in your own unique ways, are participating and putting your unique energies and creativity into these changes. Now, this is a quote that I haven't used, so I'm going to read it in its entirety, but it is literally profound. DK has warned that many older esotericists can become overly comfortable with their knowledge and their understanding of the ageless wisdom, particularly on the technical side. And so this quote to me is just so germane. Almost a century ago, the Master DK via AAB made this important statement. People are apt to forget that with each forward advance of humanity, the demands upon the hierarchy change. New needs must be met, new techniques used, new and experimental methods must be employed. As I write for disciples and initiates, I call this to their attention. That's very powerful, because one of the dangers is, if we look at, as an example, the early theosophical work, which was so important to what we're doing now, they became crystallized and they didn't open up to not only new aspects of the ageless wisdom teaching, but new ways of presenting it. And I think that is changing even in some of the older theosophical circles. Okay, we're going to be really sort of zooming in on this idea of tuning the inner ear, or what DK called also the etheric hearing. And in the development of the Antakarana Bridge, which has basically 6 stages, we're going to inject where knowing one's personal ray in its color and even its note and their soul color and note is very, very important. And the correct methods of invoking the personality and the soul rays, and the correct method of listening to the response of the solar angel as it begins to contact the attentive and waiting agent, the personality. Now, I'd like to see a raise of hands of anyone who might have participated in my presentation that I made at the SRI yearly conference. And I asked that question because this is the presentation I wanted to make several weeks back with that wonderful conference, but time restraints diverted a lot of important information. So you're going to see a little bit of that here, some of the same presentation, but only we're going to expand it into a number of different interesting areas with a lot of videos. So are there any hands raised? Michael, I can't sort of see from
Yeah,
my end of it.
quite a
Okay,
lot.
and
I mean, one,
okay,
two, three, four, five, 6, 8, 9, 9, 10. There
okay,
may be other
excellent.
people, 11, 12. There may be other people who
Okay,
went,
that's
but they
fine.
don't know, can't find their canned.
It gives me a reference point because repetition is important, but we don't want to go too far into repeating what others have already been exposed to. Now, the Om in the AUM is the word of glory and is the Christ in us. It is the hope of the future. When this word is rightly apprehended, it causes the second or Christ aspect of divinity to shine forth resplendently. It is the sound which brings into manifestation the incarnating soul, the divine ego, the Christ, and causes the radiant ogoids to be seen on earth. This is the reappearance of the advanced disciples, initiates, and eventually even the masters themselves, because they have mastered their soul word in earlier cycles and gone beyond that up into the Buddhic realm. Now, this quote by DK actually has additional insights, and this is an extension of what I just shared. The AUM is the synthesizer of the three aspects, and therefore is primarily the word of the human kingdom in which the three lines of divine life meet: spirit, soul, and body. It is also the word of the fifth, the Aryan race in a special sense. The work of that race is to reveal in a newer and fuller way the nature of the inner identity of the soul within the form, the son of mind, the solar angel, the fifth principle. The significance of the word only becomes apparent after the light within is realized. By its use, the spark becomes a radiant light, the light becomes a flame, and the flame eventually becomes a sun. By its use, the sun of righteousness arises in the life of every man and woman. Each of the three letters of AUM has relation to the three aspects, and each can be applied to any of the known triplicities. 9, the master, the God within, is indeed the word, the AUM. And of this master found at the heart of all beings, it is true that in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. Thus duality, and the Word was God. Through its use, man arrives at a realization. So the idea of recognizing the solar angel visually through color and auditorily through sound is very, very important. Now, what you see here is sort of a technical outline of the different stages of the recognition with sound. And these tabulations and charts that I'm presenting, do not be intimidated by them. Do not feel if you're not absorbing the entirety of these that there's something wrong, because these require a lot more study than we can provide time-wise here. But if you begin at the bottom of the chart on the right-hand side where it says Army of the Voice, language in its many diversities, formulas of the lower mind, sacred vowels, senza. You're going up in the hierarchy of sound each time into a more expanded level. That's more of the third aspect. Although keep in mind, these different sounds and placements, they do overlap. So it's not as rigid as you're looking at. Then you go up into sounding of the Om and the AUM, the enunciation of the words of power, the 7-ray mantrams, which can be given by the master or they can be self-ascertained. And then on and up through the soul levels and up onto monadic levels. So if you look over here to the left, you'll see I've distinguished these three AUM to the left of each one of these conical vortices. And this is taken directly from Rays and Initiations, Volume 4. And it was one of the last books that she worked on. And it shows sound in a vortical visual. Now, this is very important because as we get into some of these animations, it is important that everyone see how you go from a lower mental word formula of your rays up onto abstract levels of the soul and even beyond that. But the most important place to start and to build a foundation is the lower mind. Okay, now what we're going to do here is repeat what I just said in the previous animations and statements, only we're going to get a little more granular and we're going to see how this whole thing happens, not from below up that I briefly outlined in the last visual, but above down. And what I'm going to share with you right now is sort of a paraphrase of DK taken from his different books. How does this whole thing start? Well, it starts on a monadic level. The monad in its high state, it sounds its note and it listens attentively within its own being to what it may be lacking. Now, this in itself is a profound statement because when we think of the monad, we think of, oh, the monad is perfect. No, monads are not perfect. They are far more advanced and perfected than we are, or even a soul level, but they, in their higher state, are reaching out for greater light. So the monad sounds its note, it listens attentively within itself, and it says, wow, I have all these powerful subrays developed, but I need to develop more on this other side. So if you look at this chart and you see this would be the chart of somebody with the first ray monad. So on the next level, what the monad does is it sends down these tendrils or these bridges that we call the antakarana. And I'm going to skip all the technicalities here to make this user-friendly. So what does the monad do? It sends down this antakarana bridge, which anchors itself on the high mental plane, and it creates the solar angel. Now, it can be borrowed from the heart of the sun or Venus or other places, but it basically is under the guidance and stimulation of the monadic level itself. So now the soul anchors itself. And the soul, like the monad, has three aspects: Atma, Buddhi, Manas, but with an emphasis on the second ray because it's a second ray soul. Now, the soul on its level prior to incarnation, and what I mean by that is prior to creating the personality ray and the three lower instruments, it sounds its note. And it says, as a great being of love, I can sense I lack the third ray. So what does the soul do? It sends down these tendrils, very much like Jacob's ladder, only technically it's the antakarana in its dual or triple form. And the personality comes into existence because of the soul. The personality sounds its note and it says, okay, I've developed the third ray, but I need to mature that and balance it with other ray influences or even the third ray itself. So what does the personality note do? It sends down these three streams of light and sound, and it anchors in the lower mind, the lower subplanes of the mental, the personality, the personality note anchors on the lower mental, the seventh ray. It anchors on the emotional plane, the sixth ray, and the physical etheric, the first ray. There are no bad ray charts, just as there are no bad astrological charts. Sometimes you are given energies to assimilate because they round out your development. And all seven rays must be linked together to different degrees by all disciples. So here we are. Let's reverse this process. Let us say we're not aware of our soul or monadic note, but we're aware of our personality note, lower mind, emotional, and physical etheric. Your personality note will not blaze forth in all of its sonorous sound and color until you integrate the lower mind, the emotions, and physical etheric. And this is why esoteric psychology is so important, because it demonstrates, it shows you, it directs you to your strengths and your weaknesses. When you can integrate those three lower aspects of yourself, you are now in the presence of something brighter and more luminous, which is the personality note. And then when you take the personality note that has assimilated the light of these three lower personality principles, and this is what we're going to go into today, it takes the personality note and directs it towards the world of the soul. And when the soul can fully overshadow the personality note, now there's really only one note, and that is the note of the divine word or the soul, the solar angel on its own plane. And what is the personality note? It is a subnote. It does not cease to exist. It simply becomes automatic, like breathing. How much attention do we pay to our own breathing? And then eventually, with the personality fused, the personality ray fused with the soul ray, we project it up onto monadic levels. And we're going to get into that in more detail. But let's take another quote by DK, who explains this beautifully. And there'll be time for questions as we get into this a little further. No glamour, no illusion can long hold the man or woman who has set themselves the task of treading the razor's edge path which leads through the wilderness, through the thickest forest, through the deep waters of sorrow and distress, through the valley of sacrifice and over the mountains of vision to the gate of deliverance. He may travel sometimes in the dark, and the illusion of darkness is very real. He may travel sometimes in a light so dazzling and bewildering that he can scarcely see the way ahead. He may know what it is to falter on the path and to drop under the fatigue of service and of strife. He may be temporarily sidetracked and wander down the bypaths of ambition, of self-interest, and of material enchantment. But the lapse will be but brief. Nothing in heaven or earth or elsewhere can prevent the progress of the man who has awakened to the illusion, who has glimpsed the reality beyond the glamour of the astral plane, and who has heard, if only once, the clarion call of his own soul. So that is what this presentation is about. In spite of the fact that I sometimes talk in circles and go off on little mini occult tangents, this is going to be a wonderful opportunity. And this all falls under the category of nada or mantra yoga. And if you've read the Tibetan's teachings, you'll find that he says it's coming, but back 75, 100 years ago, he clearly states it's just a little too dangerous to make too much known around color and sound and the Deva evolution and just soul and personality notes. But the time has come for this information to be more widely distributed. And I know many of you are working on this, so it is not entirely new. Another quote by the Tibetan, and I love this because it's also almost like something out of Agni Yoga. It's intuitive, it's poetic. Listen, O pilgrim, for when that sound strikes in colorful vibration upon the inner sense, know that a point has been achieved, marking a great transition. Watch then, O pilgrim, for the coming of that hour, with purified endeavor, mount nearer to that sound. Know when its tone steals through the misty dawn, or in the mellow sunlight strikes soft upon the ear, that soon the inner hearing will become expanded feeling and will give place to sight and perfect comprehension. Know when the music of the spheres comes to you note by note, in the misty dawn or sunny noon, at cool of eve, that in their rhythmic tone lies secret revelation. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Occult science merged with esoteric poetry, if I'm permitted to take some liberties here. Here's a quote where DK actually describes that at your highest point in your meditation, when you're sounding the Om and you're retaining its force in the head by an act of the will, but without any strain or pressure, the retention of energy is not a physical thing, but it's a mental process. Then holding the consciousness as high in the head as possible, see how long you can achieve the position of listening without becoming negative or losing the recollection of who you are or what you are doing. Never relinquish in this work the sense of personal identity. So here's an exact, detailed quote where DK is indicating the importance of, after you have sounded the Om, which is an active, outgoing part of the invocation, before the evocation, which is the solar angel on its own plane, hearing your cry, hearing your directed invocation and responding to it, you have to go into this neutral place. And it's a place where the lower mind is put into abeyance. And as he says here, you're not kicking the lower mind, you're not diminishing it, but you're not overly focused in it. And this is what DK calls serene expectancy. In the Agni Yoga teachings through Master M, they talk about spatial sound and energy is called sublime expectancy. And it's done with the use of the mind as a springboard, but this is where, when the solar angel responds to your call, and this, by the way, is why you need to know the solar angel's note and its color, because he, she, it, whatever you conceive of it to be, will turn from their own important evolution and put their gaze downward through this bridge that you have built. You create the first half of the bridge, the soul creates the second half of the bridge, and in their meeting, revelation occurs. Now, this is where DK is talking about sounding the two notes of the personality ray and the soul ray. And he says, herein lies the problem. To sound these two notes synchronously and with the mind focused. Herein lies a clue to the significance of the AUM or the Om. In the early stages of meditative work, the word is sounded audibly, while later it is sounded inaudibly. This training in the sound of the AUM is an unconscious preparation for the dual work of spiritual creation. And facility comes as the attentive aspirant accustoms himself to hear within his brain the soundless sound of Om. Now, that is a very enigmatic statement, the soundless sound. It's not sound as we understand it, but it is sound coming from some angelic or Davidic realm that is attempting through its powerful note to clear a path between the two, the solar angel on its own plane and you, the waiting, attentive instrument. Okay, so he says, I would suggest here that students accustom themselves to work in this manner, sounding the word audibly and with much frequency at the close of the morning meditation, but emphasizing in the early part that close attention to the inaudible hearing, which will develop the sensitivity of the inner ear, the etheric ear. Later, when the personal note or sound is established and the inner soul sound is sensed, there can be a definite practice in blending the two. This entails the closest attention and the power to perform two activities simultaneously with the mental attitude of attention to both. Remembering you have to use the mental focus at first, but once that sound is sent out, you will begin to feel a response from the solar angel on its own plane. And if your lower mind is too engaged in the technical part of this, it will prevent the descent of the solar angel fully into your auric sheaths. This is a paradox, and it is not one that can be put into language. And all of you have experienced this to greater or lesser degrees, where you've done your meditation, you've invoked out into the universe or the solar angel, and then there's this silence, this stillness, which is creative. A note, a sound, a symbol, a vibration heat, light will manifest only when you have created a space for it to come into your auric sheaths. And this is key to the third initiation. Third initiation is the ability not simply to go beyond getting control the majority of one's desires and stilling the astral body, but to be able to calm the mind, use the mind, calm the lower mind so that the solar angel will descend. Okay, now we're going to move into our first animation. And then after this animation, we're going to open it up and we're going to discuss this, because I realize I have given you an immense amount of material just in the first 20 minutes here. And your ideas, your feedback are very important. So what we're going to do is we're going to listen to a very advanced, what is called a throat or overtone singer, who can produce two sounds at once. And she is actually doing visually what we need to do mentally. Now, this is not to say she's not doing this mentally. In fact, as we get into this, you're going to see this lady is very advanced. She's an initiate, and she will produce even more than two sounds, or she produces a bass note, and then she sounds secondary notes over the bass note. And just a little background on this Natasha Nikki Prevelik, because you might want to research, and I have down here a link. Mike, you might want to see if that link is active and put it up in the chat, because this lady is doing profound stuff. Okay, this is Natasha. She is known as one of the premier overtone singers in the world. She has perfected an ancient art of singing that is believed to have started among tribes in Western Mongolia and southern Siberia. Originally, these tribes thought this type of singing could be used to communicate with both the natural and the supernatural worlds. Overtone singing is a rare skill where singers create two notes simultaneously, resulting in a meditative spiritual state. And this is a quote from her. The theme is to really be alone with your bare voice and your presence in the empty space. To be alone and at the same time to feel the all one. Now that's a unique word put together beautifully. So use this sort of like a meditation, and just without overly activating the lower mind, imagine that you are sounding the two notes, personality and soul note. And we'll get into the color and sound of that in a little more detail later. What's interesting before we get into some questions and shares is that this lady demonstrates not only mantra and nada yoga, and there are other names for those two sciences. In fact, every esoteric core group has to have a link with sound, and they may call it by different cultural or historical names, but it's the very base of what holds all the esoteric work together. Note her tremendous control of the breath. And this is not the time to go into esoterically the idea of occult breathing, but she has mastered what I will call, for lack of better words, the group breath, the breath of the solar angel on its own plane, which breathes, but breathes in a different atmosphere, but has a connection to every single person down on the planet. And this is particularly recognized by disciples because they know breathing is rhythmic and the soul and the interface with the personality and the soul is rhythmic. And also note her hands. This is what is called the science of mudra. She is literally taking these high energies on a causal level, having them pass through her with her unique throat singing, and then she's further grounding it by manipulating these currents and sending them out onto the etheric with her hand gestures. These are not just some dance that she thought might be fun to do. They are part of a deep esoteric tradition that these different cultures have developed. And DK says in Letters on Occult Meditation that you can enter into these different spiritual states or have them supported by learning certain types of dances and rhythmic motions. Okay, excellent. We're now open. If anybody wants to share their impression of what we've just outlined, feel free to do it now.
So there's, I'll just read these and then we'll go to the hand, Ishtar. I think it's important to give attention to and align with the note, sound, and color hue of the oversoul of humanity. That was in response to your writing. And Ishtar, continuing consciousness as the eternal observer, is sounding a note of alignment. And if anybody wants to link to that,
Excellent.
I put the link for that. And
Ishtar,
now, Ishtar.
let me just comment to that. Ishtar is correctly on point here. And keep in mind that humanity has a soul ray. It is the fourth, and it is golden yellow. And when DK in some of those earlier quotes, he started talking about the soul, he took it right into the soul of humanity because the word, in other words, we all have an individual note or what we call the individual soul. But DK says that is only temporary to the soul note of the group. And that is only temporary, the recognition of it, to the soul note of the entire human kingdom. Okay, open mic.
Good morning. How's everybody? It's very fascinating to hear that lady singing two notes at the same time. It's quite incredible. And I wonder whether that was an old Atlantean way of dealing with creating magic on the physical plane that was abused. Maybe it's being given to us again. I'm not sure. But anyway, just wanted to pull a thought towards plants. Plants emit energy all the time, and recently they've been playing the energy through a musical instrument so that we can actually hear that energy translated into physical sound, and they make beautiful music.
Yes.
So, yeah, and then sound is also inner sound. So and the clairvoyant, as you move higher on the sensitivity, you will hear inner sounds. So obviously the distorted astral sounds is the first stage, which you move through. Then you get to a higher sound, which is a very, very subtle spiritual impression sound. So you can hear words on the inner plane, but a quietness of the mind is needed. And also that sounding will come as images as well. So the energy translates at various different levels and can be different, I guess, Duane, according to our ray makeup, how we were going to receive that. So each person has to find out what you are developing and how you will listen for those sounds. So an interesting one for me is just the other day I had my higher self. For me, it's always in the early morning, just before I awake, which is the quietest, stillest time where impressions can be received very clearly. So I get a visual image. And so, as you were saying, Duane, symbolism is very important to develop intuitively what you're picking up from that. And your higher self will send something that will resonate for you, because your higher self also understands how you think. So
Yes.
I was given a hint, one image, and it was of a medieval man. So I have to take that hint, and at the same time I received intuition about him being some kind of master, some kind of spiritual guru of some sort. But through the clothing that I saw in the image was my hint symbolically to go and search to find him. So because my higher self knows how I work, I search on the internet, and then I start to find out and track down and see, oh, here's this man from ancient Persia. And he was the original philosopher who started Sufism. So that's where I'm up to. So my higher
Excellent.
self wants me to know something about the way his philosophy was, how he preached, because your higher self wants you to develop a certain way. So that's a hint for me. So that's where I'm up to, and I will work on that as time goes, as I pray
Excellent.
and meditate. Yeah.
Thank you
Thank you
so
for listening.
much.
Helps other people
Beautiful,
to
beautiful
find
share,
their way.
and
Yes.
so relevant. And I would point out before we go to the next person, that what you said about sound being used in earlier cycles like Atlantean times in a very dark way. And
Mm.
this is why when you study esoteric astrology, there's two subsidiary sciences that come under that, and that's the science of triangles and the science of Laya Yoga. And when DK and Laya Yoga is the study of the fiery force centers. What are their notes? What is their coloring? How to use them in meditation to do advanced service work. But DK says it was withdrawn during the Atlantean period because this Laya Yoga was misused. But he said it's now coming back cyclically into manifestation, and it will be available for all advanced disciples to be of greater service. So here's a case where any of the spiritual energies that we outline can be used improperly. And the hierarchy has come to the determination that there's enough disciples in the world at this time to release more information around these psychic powers and the science of Laya Yoga and Mantra Yoga and other yogas. This is also true of astrology. So thank you for that. Okay, great. Open mic.
Thank you.
Ariane.
Thank you. I really appreciated that last share because I don't know any of you here, but that you shared your personal work and brought that into this study. I want to just say a few things. And I normally cannot attend. Saturday is a work day for me, but I have a little time today at opening. Just to say that I very much appreciate your efforts to the teacher. And the group that I'm working with, Share International, we use Laya Yoga in transmission meditation. So that's something to consider. It is the use of the chakras and focusing on the Ajna center while meditating and keeping one's focus there. I want to make a comment about this extraordinary woman singing, though. You can see how everything is vibration, that sound is vibration, that this woman has a very pure and refined energy, that's vibration, and that the space in which she sings also has a vibration, and they've chosen it for that, and that she's sort of molding the sound with her hands, sort of like what they do in Qigong. And I think maybe what for us personally, when we think about Mongolia and the Gobi Desert, that's supposed to be where Shambhala is located on the etheric realm over Mongolia. Of course, we don't have the capacity to live in that culture, that austere culture where it seems like, it's one of the poorest places on earth. It seems like nothing is happening there. But obviously, energetically, we can see in this small video, we can feel how space, environments, rooms, and neighborhoods hold energy. And light holds energy. And, light can be fractured into its components like orbs, just like water can be. And everything is recording the sounds and the thoughts and the feelings and the vibration that we're sharing. And that behooves us to observe ourselves and to monitor those things within us that we're sharing with the rest of the world. I mean, it's sort of like we are never alone. We are with ourselves, hopefully aware in the moment. So then in some sense there's two. And then if we're aware of ourselves in the world, we're monitoring what and how we impact our world. And when we think like that, and when the world's consciousness moves beyond its 0.33 average point of evolution that it is at, supposedly, then we have some hope that something new could come in of a different vibration than what we see now at this time of transition, as the planet transitions from the age of Pisces to the age of Aquarius, and there's a tremendous tumult as everything is disrupted around that. So thank you.
Excellent. That was just wonderful. And it is so important to create space for all of you to share, because your process is uniquely yours, yet at the same time, it parallels all the rest of us. And we can give each other a helping hand by sharing these insights and links. Rose and I have become involved in a project to bring up your idea of sacred space here in the Grass Valley, California area that some of you might be interested in. And Mike, I'd appreciate it if you'd put the link to Indraleya in the chat box. But it's just trying to create, just as you had outlined, a space that's conducive to high vibration and to sharing and holding space, not just for our little group here in Grass Valley, but for all of the discipleship groups and the planet. Holding space for the planet to, in some small way, move forward to the next level. And I know that sounds a bit pretentious, but I always, and I apologize for the repetition here, go back to Gurdjieff, the great mystic occultist who came at the turn of the century to Europe. And he said to his disciples one day, prior to a meditation, he said, "Let us help lift the burden of our common Father in heaven." And that is a very occult statement. It's not, oh, let's just get high and let's just leave the material plane because it's such a bummer down here. It's how can we, in some small way, help co-create, help lift, however small it may seem, the burden of our common Father in heaven. Because we are all cells within the planetary logos, and this logos is struggling for more light. And as bizarre as this is going to sound, his progress, her progress, is in some way dependent on our progress. And this is also true of Shambhala, the hierarchy, and the animal kingdom, vegetable, mineral kingdom. So we're all, like you said, interconnected as we move forward, and no one is going to get left behind. Okay, any additional comments?
Yeah, Ishtar, wonderful explanation of the Atlantean misuse of sacred mantra. Ray 1, using energy is also sound, Duane, question mark. As energetic Fohat pours forth is sound vibration, question.
Yes. And every one of these different divisions that I'm going to share with you overlap, interpenetrate, and at certain levels blend. DK says that sound, the interior recognition of sound, is more first ray. The first ray disciple aligns with that more than the second ray disciple. However, any ray can tune into the sound of Shambhala, sound of hierarchy, sound of your solar angel. Second ray disciples are more apt to register color and light in the early stages of this soul contact. And third ray types are apt to register vibrations in the different centers. They can feel heat, they can feel expansions, and also, in addition to vibration, divine geometry. But again, keep this in mind. You can experience any one of those, a combination of those, or all of those. It depends on your solar angel and your lower instruments and what ray they are and how far along the path you are. Thank you. That was excellent.
I put the link to Indralaya, and there's a comment from Francis about Indralaya there. But other than that, unless Ishtar's hands up to speak again, if so, you can talk. If not, there's no one else.
Okay, Francis, you're on.
Sorry, that was a mistake, Michael. I didn't put the hand down.
Okay. No, Francis just said that
Oh,
he's
okay.
been to Angelaya with Duane and Rose, and the vibration
okay.
there is magnetizing.
Thank you, Francis. Yes, and I recall your comment. I've committed it to memory, and I hope I'm not violating any sense of secrecy here, but I recall your comment, which was so powerful, and it was, I feel like I'm in the ashram. And I suspect you feel you're in the ashram because, to me, you already are, and that's not because you came to Indralaya, but because you bring that with you, and you recognized what is within you is now being reflected geographically through this sacred space that we are attempting to create. So thank you, Francis. And when you came, Francis, you left an indelible part of your energy system or sheaths on that mountaintop. Okay. Any additional comments?
Ben, the Father's burden, our service, lifting our point on Indra's net, raises all connected.
Excellent. Indra's net. We are all a pearl on Indra's net, which is an expression of the etheric body. When any of you make progress on the path, and that can be through an expansion of consciousness, it can be just a new, deeper, and more creative thought. It has a reciprocal effect on all of the people in this group. And yes, it does depend on whether maybe they're here out of curiosity and they all they need is just a little information, which is certainly very beautiful, or some of the more seasoned disciples who have done a lot of this. And what I'm sharing is redundant, but hopefully I'm putting it in a slightly different format for a greater or more easy assimilation or a more advancement along those same lines. This is nothing new to any of you, and I understand that. Okay, Indra's net. We are all on Indra's net. When somebody like a spider web twangs the net by upping the energy level and their different vehicles, it thrills, keyword the Tibetan uses, down through this network of etheric light, and it affects not only us, the group we're affiliated, the groups we're affiliated with, but the entire planetary structure. And this, I think, is what is meant when, I don't know if it's in the Bible or who said it, but even a sparrow dies and God knows about it. Now, that's a huge jump from what I just said, but the basic symbology is there. Everything is connected. We're all breathing a one united breath. And if you can really study that Natasha and make it into a meditation, she will enter into you and she will change you. Not because she's some powerful personality, but because her personality has been put, to quote the Tibetan, in its rightful place, and the soul energies coming from the ashram are pouring through her. Okay, any additional?
Yeah, a few more, but
Good.
Anna, by the receptivity to living streams of sound that travel along waves of colored light, each level of Davic life is stimulated and brought into full functioning activity by applying force from the next level above it. Passing this energy through their bodies of flame, they step it down to the next lower subplane where entirely different group of devas continue this redemptive process.
Thank you so much, Anna. I remember writing that, but it is a statement that we all make, that when you move into the field, and this idea of the personality and soul ray are so important because the solar angel is an angelic life, and it's linked with these great devas that can not only integrate and transfigure and transform you, but they can outwardly be directed once they're in your auric field to this rehabilitation that or service we're constantly doing. And it doesn't matter whether you're baking cakes for the local Rotary or you're in an advanced integrated group that's really pouring out these redemptive forces. You are playing your part. The idea that we are bodies of flame And why do we recognize when somebody speaks something of some value or wisdom or truth? It's because the flame within you is being the flame within them released. And you can always tell an advanced person by their ability, and there are many mockeries of this if you go on the internet, that the initiate does not just speak in words, but they speak in words that are they're imbued with an inner flame, and it will stimulate you emotionally, mentally, in your heart center in particular, and in time, if you're ready, on the level of spiritual will. Thank you. Thank you for that comment.
And then thank you, Duane. Pearl and Indra's net, also called the blue pearl. As you progress, you will see flashes of this blue pearl within your etheric vision or inner eye.
Yes, and the blue pearl can be associated with a number of different things, but it's usually associated with a solar angel on its own plane, and it is some type of hued blue. And I've forgotten the master who wrote books on this, on the blue pearl. Not Vivekananda, not Yogakananda. It was anyway. Thank you. The blue pearl, the pearl of great price, as the Bible says. Okay, if there's any more comments, now's the time, or we'll.
I'll just do the next one and we're good. The reciprocal effect is an expression of the law group progress, the fifth law of the soul.
Excellent. Is that Michael?
Yeah, Michael Stacy.
Michael Stacy. Thank you, Michael. I can tell your input even before it comes out verbally. Thank you for gracing us with your presence. Okay, I'll jump to the next quotation, and we're going to get back into some more animations shortly. I mentioned the devas, and it has been one of my main themes through all of my presentations in so many different forums over the last 40 years. And the devas and the angels come in with the reappearance of the Christ, and their whole purpose is to heal the planet. And when we confuse with the deva evolution, we will undergo initiation, because initiation is a lot more than just accruing many tidbits of occult information. It is being able to take that information, have techniques, meditations, types of alignment that will put all of us in direct alignment with this is the essence. Well, the Christ brings multiple forces, but he brings an intimacy of the Deva and angelic kingdoms to help this whole process along. Okay. Contacting the Deva and angelic kingdoms is a science primarily based on the manipulation of sound, color, and vibration. And keep in mind, getting in contact with the Deva evolution, as a number of people have shared, not here, but in other forums, is not just the feminine evolution. The Devas work along all the ray lines, and there are first ray Devas that are called in during crises to take certain people out of incarnation when their usefulness has expired, B, help to disintegrate or restructure it into something better and more luminous, and you're seeing this right now, the Christ and the avatar of synthesis and Shambhala bringing in these first ray Devas to break down these rigid structures that are preventing the light from pouring in. So DK says, rejoice in the destruction of the old. Learn that it is a part of the teachings that have to come before the even greater revelations. And he says this about the soul. He says that when you contact the soul, you really are contacting a dual light. And the lesser light of the soul illuminates all those obstacles that are preventing you from contacting the higher light of the soul and it shining in with all its power, its magnificence, and beauty. So don't be turned off if in your meditations there's some disruptive work that has to take place first. That's just the soul working through Saturn and a number of other planets that are saying, well, not so fast. You've got some clouds here that have to be cleared up before we will show you the full beauty of the soul. And Saturn actually later in the higher initiations, third initiation and afterwards, kicks in a whole different level because it brings in atmic energy. But it's a veil. All astrological signs and planets and whatever, they all veil something more powerful when you study it. Okay, we have 3 stages of the egoic work, which are the sounding of the appropriate note, which note indicates man's place in evolution and of the nature of his psyche or ego. And he's not talking about the little ego here. The transmission of this note by the solar angel and the 3 groups of devas connected with the 3 permanent atoms. Okay, this could get technically very complex, so we're going to skip over this lightly, other than say that the solar, knowing the note of the solar angel, and this is also true of the personality note, it's connected with 3 groups of elementals in one case, the 3 lower bodies, and 3 higher devas connected with the permanent atoms. Actually, it's both. The vibration set up within these atoms, which is in line with the note sounded, and which becomes so strong as to make itself felt in the surrounding devic substance, thus awakening response. These may be considered as the 3 primary stages, and we find demonstrated in connection with the microcosm the 3 factors of sound, color, and vibration, which under the law of analogy reflect the 3 aspects of the macrocosm. Here too is found a resemblance to the work of the first 3 sephira of the Kabbalah, the primary stages of manifestation, finding its dim reflection in the work of the ego and the 3 worlds. All major religious expressions have at their core, like the Jewish tradition of the Kabbalah, some very esoteric teachings. And our job, whether it's Christianity or the Muslim tradition or Taoism or Sufism or whatever, is to help strengthen those students and aspirants and disciples who are ready for the next level. And you do that most effectively and most powerfully by understanding your personality note and your soul note, and how your recognition of that stimulates the recognition of others within the group, whether they're known or unknown, or whether you're personally connected with them or not. And this is the law of analogy, as above, so below. What's happening, as I pointed out in our early opening statements and charts, the monad reflects through the law of analogy its great and austere being, through the soul level, which reflects its great contribution in creative work, down through the personality ray and the 3 lower instruments. Man, women, know thyself, and you will know God. And we're not looking for something outside of ourselves. And it's a curious blend of getting to know what the real self is as opposed to what the shadow self is. Okay, cosmic fire has spoken. Okie dokie. Now we're going to quickly go into the 7 divine rays, and this chart again, we're not going to explore this in any great depth, other than say that we're all grouped by the ray outlines by a 6-ray chart: monadic, soul, personality, and the 3 lower bodies. So if you look to the bottom left of this chart, you see where I have these 7 squares with the different notes and the different colors. And each one of you should have a generic idea of whether your personality ray is of which color and what's the corresponding note. And this is very interesting because I have worked with people for the last 25 years on helping them discover their rays. And often people say, well, I don't know what the color of my ray is. Okay, I've used that color and nothing happens. That's all right. And the reason for that is because, let's just say we're talking about the first ray Shiva note, RE, red. Let us say that is your soul note. If you visualize that and with the personality note in this color and you project it up onto triadic levels, just because you don't experience that fiery red of Shambhala doesn't mean you're not connecting tentatively with the first ray. Because if you look carefully, and I hope there's nobody on their cell phone because they won't be able to see this, every one of those rays to the right of it has 7 additional subrays. Every ray has 7 subrays. And all the other rays are included in that ray embryonically in some way. This is why all the rays, and this is true of the planes too, can communicate amongst themselves because they all have some subray that's common. This is how the masters work. They may have a dominant ray or dominant rays, but they're not masters of all the 7 rays, and they communicate amongst themselves through the subrays. So let's just say Master R at the very bottom, the violet flame, connects with, and this is an oversimplification, but it is occultly true, with, let's say, first ray Master Moya through that 7th subray. And just as Master Moya through the first subray of Master Rakatsi. And you have many combinations here, and I hope I'm not making this too befuddling, because it will explain when you get into receiving color. If you don't get the color that somebody laid out like I did with a chart, that doesn't mean it's wrong. It means you're onto something much realer than a chart, and your own soul will take over at some point and it will reveal the correct color. And note, okay, me is the 4th ray, yellow, and it's the ray of humanity's soul. But the thing is, you can come into that on more of a golden with a tinge of red or blue or any of the other 7 rays. So be gentle with yourself. Let the lower mind create the foundational work, but never try to force yourself into something prematurely. Okay, so there's the 7 notes, and just you can take a moment and just, which I'm sure you already have, even before I showed you this chart, a sense of what your personality and soul ray is, because we're going to use it in the closing meditation. Okay, now, this is where the presentation, in my opinion, gets really interesting, because what I just showed you in the previous graph, those 7 rays, here they are in this chart. duplicated under the column number 1, the 7 rays and the 7 subrays. Now, when you shift your eye to the numeral 2 and you look down, you see what appears to be all these colors beginning to rotate. Number 2 is the same identical chart that I pulled up in Adobe Photoshop, and I hit the twirl tool and I spun it. So chart 1 and chart 2 are really the identical chart under slightly different influences. And then ray 3 is the same identical as ray 2 and 1. The only difference is I spun it at a higher speed, and you're beginning to see how the rays, which are distinctly graphically presented in number 1 and starting to morph in number 2, are now morphed to a very large degree. In fact, now what you see is what DK calls mutated colors, where a ray, and this is true of the planes, but a ray passing around or in the vicinity or in a greater organism with another ray or which has another color. And what do you see here? I find this fascinating. The 4th ray is the mediator, Mercury, the solar mind. It is the mediator between the upper triad and the 3 lower principles. And when you look at number 3, it looks like an eye. And that's not something I deliberately did in Photoshop. It just emerged. So this is a chart where we're not showing Shambhala or ray 1 in the very center. We're showing ray 4, humanity, the 4th ray. And when I look at that graph or tabulation 3, and I look at 2, 2 to me is like somebody flipping a pizza in a pizza parlor, and number 1 is a nice lower mind graph. So what we're going to move into now is like closer to number 3. It's taking the second image and rotating it and putting it into a spiral. And this is very, very important because DK says all the rays are under the impression or influence of 3 types of motion: rotary, the 3rd aspect of divinity, active intelligence; cyclic spiral, the 2nd aspect of divinity, see here in number 2; and then 3rd, which is actually 2 and 3 are really under the influence of rotary motion. We can't show what progressive motion is, which is the 1st ray, because paradoxically, it's not motion at all as we understand it. It's the still point, it's Fohad, it's that Bindu point, it's the Laya point. Okay, so take a deep breath, relax, and really breathe in and see, as DK says, we need to learn how the initiates and the masters see things on the inner planes, even if it's temporary or tentative and really only in a small way. Okay, I'm going to come back to this quote next. We're going right into the meditation.
Bargo devasya dimai Yona prachodaya Bhuvasva tatsavitu vareniyam Bargo devasya devasya dimai diyo yona prachodaya Om Bhurvasva Tatsaviturvarenyam Bhargo devasya dimai diyo yona prachodaya Om Bhurvasva Tatsaviturvarenyam Bhargo devasya dimai diyo yona prachodaya Om Bhurvasva Tatsaviturvarenyam Bhargo devasya dimai diyo yona prachodaya Svaha Tatsaviturvarenyam Bhargo devasya dimai diyo yona prachodaya Om Bhurvasvaha Tatsaviturvarenyam Bhargo devasya dimai diyo yona prachodaya Om Bhurvasvaha Tatsaviturvarenyam Bhargo devasya
Okay, the floor is open for anyone who would like to share.
So first comments, they asked about that chart you posted. Is that on your site?
It is, but
Is it easy to get to, or
I can send it to you, Mike, after this presentation. I
okay,
have it in so many different places.
okay. And
Rose, you're
then
not on, are you?
no, she was there with
Okay.
you. And then Diana
Okay.
says, perhaps this is why masters can share his own disciples with masters of another race. When you were
This,
talking about the subrays and the
no, this is a very, very important insight that Diana has shared with us. When you study the esoteric lineage of, let's, as an example, say the Buddhist, you'll find that in their different hermitages, monasteries, and lineages, that it is not uncommon when a student or a disciple of the head master either is felt not to be fully acclimated with that type of teachings, and so they're sent to another ashram, or they've learned sufficiently what that master is trying to teach along a certain line, and usually a ray line, and they send them to other masters who, although as advanced as they are advanced in different ways. So, Diana, that's an excellent insight.
and then Anna, humanity will create a new Jerusalem. The growth of the New Jerusalem has been ongoing since the mystery of Golgotha. When the human being has entirely fulfilled his time on earth, he will have reached the stage in which he not only weaves the heavenly substance into his own body through his senses, but in which he extends the heavenly substance through what we call spiritual knowledge and art into what will be the external city. The old Jerusalem was built from below upwards. The new Jerusalem will be built in all reality from above downwards. Book of Revelation by Rudolf Steiner, Lecture 9.
Anna,
And
that's awesome.
and then Ben added, I'm making all things new, Revelation 21.
Awesome. Behold, I make all things new. That is such a beautiful mantra. And at some point, we're going to get into the words of power, because you not only in your meditation take your soul and personality ray and direct it up to triadic levels, but it's done with your word of power, which, without getting into it extensively, for the second ray person is I see the greatest light. Okay, anybody else like to share either uh, about the meditation itself or just any comments in general?
Diana, I feel that the movement has a direction or purpose that is intellectually known, but is perceived as an inner dance in cosmic resonance.
That's so beautiful. Yes. There is a poetry of the mind. And to me, it's when the mind is thinking in the heart and the heart is thinking in the mind, and they're one. We're all poets. We're all music of the spheres, because this is what it's all alluding to the music of the spheres, all the planetary lives, all the different kingdoms, our solar logos enunciating certain words and phrases and formulas that come from outside of our solar system altogether. And keep in mind that although we are all cells within the planetary logos, who's a cell or a center, I should say, in the solar logos, the solar logos is in the center of an even greater being. And when you are passing through the third initiation, you're no longer receiving energy just from our planetary level or our solar logos level. You are embryonically receiving energy from these outer constellations, which are very powerful, and they're all tinged. They all have their rays, just like down here we have personal and we have solar rays, but these are cosmic rays. They're all influenced by some aspect of the will. Excellent. We're having
Okay,
poetry readings in addition to dishing out all these technical details. Thank God. Okay.
hold on, Greg. Let me finish. So Jerry thanked you for the music, and then the chart with colors in chat. It will also get posted to the site. And
Awesome.
Veronica says, I wonder if the video you showed us had two of these spiral, like two masters communicating.
That's a beautiful observation, because you'll note that as this animation corkscrews, it can turn, the ends can turn in opposite directions, and that's what holds it together. And although that's an animated image of the seven rays, it could equally be the seven planes. And everything is held together by polarity. Duality does not exist just because you become soul conscious. Duality does not exist just because you become monadically conscious. We say that because it negates what we interpret as duality. But these dualities of the higher levels, cosmic, astral, cosmic, etheric, cosmic, mental, they're just so refined. They're way beyond our normal level of registration, but they deal with duality. Okay, any additional comments?
Yeah, well, Greg has his hand up. Go ahead, Greg.
I was thinking about, Mom, could you mute your whole thing for a second? Okay, I was thinking about it in terms of the animation that you showed.
Yes.
What it reminded me of was this aspect of, I wonder if the masters see that while our soul carries us in pralaya, and that becomes the origination of our soul and personality purpose prior to our incarnation, in a sense, that they see us as a flowing blending of colors and light that is becoming the new embryo of the new vision of the new dharma or karma of an individual soul as it's preparing itself to enter into the lower planes to assist with the greater plan of what we're all trying to do. I mean, that's kind of what your animation brought me to, was this concept that we are always in flux, and if we ever remembered aspects of ourselves being in pralaya prior to incarnation, prior to the cyclic processes of life and transformation, I wonder if that's how the masters would see us in their objective perspective, and even today that they read us from up there, they see those. It's, in a sense, it's an expression of our own auras as they are becoming manifest. I mean, that's kind of what your thing brought. So because we're all a blending of colors and we're all a blending of sound, and when we equivalate sound with color, we are defining ourselves from both levels, not only the lower ego self, but the higher soul essence of who we are. So that's what your animation
That
brought.
it is beautiful because it's an expression, if I may be so bold, as someone who has moved into the field, and the squiggles and the twist and turning, which is fascinating in itself, seen from the lower mind. And even though we depart the lower mind to have a greater understanding of it, we come back to the lower mind, and through words like you have, Greg, beautifully. That was awesome. And this is each person in their own way finding their right use of the mind, the lower mind, and putting it in its proper place. It's like on a diving board. You come up and you take this huge leap, and it's all very technical, step by step, going up the ladder. But when you are flying through the air or bursting into that great, cool, refreshing water, that great ocean, and that's like the parallel of the soul level or the light or the monad, it is like you're not thinking about the steps of the ladder. You're not even thinking about the springboard. You're just there. You're experiencing it through the intuition. And DK says we have to feel the rays. And yet he's constantly interspacing all these teachings with, but don't get sucked into the lower cycle levels. So keep that high point of tension, alignment. And you can go on the internet and you can see a lot of people working with this lower psychic energy, even with often good intentions. And this is why a trained mind, even though we refer to it as the lower concrete mind, is a great and powerful asset. It's the anchor that keeps you real. It keeps you tangible. It keeps you humble. Because no matter how far and vast you journey into the universe, you can come back and you can, through service or some way, you can express it. Because some people, when they depart into these higher regions, their personalities do not come back. And that, according to many people far wiser than I am, for the West, that can be considered a transgression. But I don't say that as a value judgment because everybody has got to follow, their dharma, their path. Excellent. Okay, any additional comments? That was, I'm so happy this is taped. We've had so many wonderful hands-on experiences of what I'm attempting to allude to, and that's all I can do. I can't do anything other than allude, and you do the work. Okay, any additional comments?
The only other thing was that from that perspective is when we are in a pralaya state, or if we can remember those aspects of our pralaya state, I'm sure it would be extremely scary, because in terms of the Tibetan Book of the Dead and the Bardo, when we enter into life after death, we have to deal with our own personality natures that has to be either released or freed up, so that we can come back over that time of Bardo into the life and the place where our Dharma has directed us.
This is another excellent insight. And the Tibetan Book of the Dead is actually called by several other names, the Bardo Thodol and the Tibetan Book of the Living. And it just sort of has stuck, this Tibetan Book of the Dead, when it's really about life. And what you have brought out is very important. Each person in this group, when the time is ready for them to make the transition to the other side of the Great Divide, they will experience what Greg has just referred to, these different Bardo states, or what is also called lokas. And they're like levels. They're like, well, they are rays. They are rays, but they're put into a different language. And in this way, if you're a person who's very comfortable with the fifth ray, in other words, it's your dominant note, and let's just say you're very advanced in the fifth ray, I'm always taking exception with the lower mind because of all kinds of reasons. Maybe because I overdeveloped it in an earlier cycle. But the point is, the fifth ray is a magnificent part of initiation that takes you way beyond the lower mind. And when you're dealing with the lower subplanes of the mental plane, the higher subplanes, you are up into the light. You're not dealing with small talk and little incidental details of your life. But the point is here that this ray that you make the transition, when you make the transition over to the other side, what will happen is the 7 rays, starting from the most mundane, will flash forth. Okay, your 5th ray, that's the dominant note of your life. When the 7th ray flashes forth, you're going to say, it's actually not a mental concept. Your auric sheaths, your entire being will say, no, that's not my color. That's not my space. It's not where I worked. Then the 6th ray, then the 7th ray color will fade away, the 7th ray light, and then the 6th ray will rise in ascendancy. And you'll say, am I sympathetic with that ray? And it'll go right up through till it hits your ray. Now, having said that, and then you will go into what you're familiar with, where you have spent the majority of your thought life, your emotional life, and your service work. Now, having said that, I'm going to say something entirely different, but it's entirely correct also. It can be reversed to that. You're shown the bright light of the void. In other words, the first ray comes in and you go, whoa, this is way too bright. I'm not ready for this. Please, God, tone it down. And according to the science of the Bardo, the Tibetan Book of the Dead, another light will shine forth, but it won't be so intense. It'll be the second ray light. And you'll say, okay, yeah, now I'm in my natural element. Life is very impersonal. It will send you where you have built yourself to, which indicates there's perfect justice in the universe. You're not going to pass out of incarnation when you're a good person and meet all kinds of demons and evil, this and that, unless that was in your auric field to begin with. You will go where you are the most comfortable and where you can continue your progress forward. And not everybody, trust me, is ready to face Shambhala or even the full fury of the second ray, because
Yep.
it is so bright, so powerful, so all consuming. You go, whoa. Okay, I'm done with my diatribe. Any additional comments?
Yeah, actually, I just wanted to share my own experience that relates to what Greg just said, and that was in 2004 when I had my last near-death experience. I wanted to know about reincarnation, and what I was shown was much different than this idea that you choose your family specifically. It was more like the planet needs this color. Do you want to fit that color? This particular shade of orange is out of balance. Do you want to come back to that space and balance the colors? And so it was this continuum of color that had nothing to do with personal attachment to some physical mother and father.
Well, that shows the scientific utilization of color and sound and supports everything I'm saying here, because you know, as a soul on its own plane, what the greater group, what the greater planet needs. And you are putting in abeyance the importance of your personal life for the service and development of the group life. That's a beautiful statement. And it reminds me of something that's parallel. DK says we are not going to have a transformed planet until we incarnate more advanced egos. So it's not just reforming and rehabilitating those who are here. He says a lot of those will just cycle out and go on to other paths. And he says that there are monads that want to incarnate for service purposes into our planetary sphere, but they refuse to incarnate, or he says several things. He says some refuse to incarnate, and he says others can't incarnate because the vibration and the color is so low. The sound is so low on the planet Earth that they have to wait for another cycle. Now, whether that's a 3-year cycle or a 7-year cycle or 11 years or 100 years, I don't know. But I found that fascinating, that they're out in the wing waiting to come in, these devas and these monadic and even soul lives, but we don't create the conditions that they can come into. Any additional comments, Mike?
Ariane, there's actually a lot. I don't know what you want to do with time. Ariane has her hand raised though. So Ariane,
Okay,
wanna...
we'll take a couple more, and I apologize if we don't get to everybody.
Yeah, I really appreciated your sharing, Michael, and also the other share in the chat about the near-death experiences and how there's so much we don't know. I just want to remark on, Rilke's poem, the Duino LG1, that every angel is terrifying. And I don't think we understand that when we're under the impact of higher influence, that it will destroy us, that it will destroy the unreal in us. And when one has met someone, a master, a teacher who's more of a, but I mean a master or the Christ, if one has been able to see or be in that they tone down their energy for us because we could not bear it. And I think that's why when you look at the first ray nation of India, first ray soul, that they worship Shiva. They do not worship Brahma. They worship Shiva because they're interested ultimately in destroying the unreal.
Yes, this is so well shared. Yes, the masters, through their representatives in a group, which is a miniature hierarchy, even here on the form side, there's usually 2 or 3 senior members of the group who step down the master's potency, and then they in turn step it down to the advanced disciples in the group, who in turn step it down. Now, it may not be quite as rigid or methodical as I have outlined. However, it is true with the usual overlapping interpenetration. When the master sends down some stream of force, even the lowliest aspirant who's just starting on the path is going to get a spin off of that energy. And you're right. The masters do the best they can to protect their disciples. And this is why they emphasize group work, because in the group work, the potency of the master is diversified. It's stepped down and distributed more evenly. Otherwise, if one person who wasn't ready got it, they'd just be toast. Thank you. Okay, we're going to take one more and then we're going to move forward.
Okay, I guess I've. Let me read this one from Anna again. Each center should be visualized as from you, as being a dual vortex within a sphere. How these centers are connected and aligned at the different stages of development must be mastered by those who seek progress on the path. This atomic matter is living substance, each atom being a tiny life palpitating with the vitality of the third logos. These lives, being negative energy, are responsive to their polar opposite and can, under the law of attraction and repulsion, be built into forms which are the expression of the second aspect. Eventually, the forms themselves become, in their turn, negative and responsive to still another type of force, becoming recipients of the life of the first logos when the fourth or human kingdom is reached. TCF 888.
Excellent. 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 Thank you, Anna. I'm just going to read part of this quote here, and then we're going to go right into some more experiential work. Oh, sorry. Okay. It is impossible for us, sweeping through on some one ray, to visualize or in any way to apprehend this beauty. Yet to those on higher levels and with a wider range of vision, the gorgeousness of the design is apparent. Now he's talking about the rays, the schemes, the planets, the rounds, the races, and all these different principles that we're studying. By mutation, I mean the fact that there is a constant changing and shifting, an endless interweaving and interlocking, and a ceaseless ebb and flow in the dramatic interplay of the forces that stand for the dual synthesis of us down here with spirit and matter. There is constant rotation in the rays and planes in their relative importance from the standpoint of time, which is the standpoint most closely associated with us. So, what you said earlier, Greg, is just so right on. And here, the Tibetan, you might want to go in that section of Cosmic Fire, page 598 to 99, because it really corresponds beautifully with what you were sharing and how the masters see things. And some people will say, well, that's pretentious, but it may be required that we begin to act as if we're more advanced than we are, and how all these other groups. Anyway, I'm going to skip some of this. It's about dragons, and here's the rays, the 7 rays, the 7 planes, and that you can't be rigid about color, because even though the 7 rays over here have these 7 colors, when they interface with the planes or other rays, they fan out and they have infinite mutated colors. And this is also true of triangle. Okay, if you can put this up to share, Michael, while I just briefly go over this, I'd appreciate it, because, oops, this is the wrong one. It doesn't have the notes. So we're going to skip that. I apologize. Here it is. This is the same as this, only seen like a cross section. Now, this is according to H.P. Blavatsky, and I'm not making any claims that these are actually the correct notes, but this is what Blavatsky shared with her esoteric students that were just recently published over the last 5 years. So if you could, somebody could grab that and make it available through the chat.
It's in chat now.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, so again, the rays, we have to see the rays as like flowering trumpets, and we have to see them as a composite with, in the very center, if you can see my mouse, that's Fohat. That's what DK calls the principle of directed purpose, or progressive motion, which paradoxically is really not motion at all. It's praleya. And we emerge out of the flowering of ourselves like the egoic lotus, with many things happening simultaneously. It's great to study. It's great to study the egoic lotus one by one, but it's so much more important to step back and say, I am the egoic lotus. I am in a state of unfolding. I am a state of livingness. People thought sound traveled straight lines for the longest time. Science, physics, so many different areas have proven otherwise. They are spheres. Sound is spherical, and it has an entry point and an exit point. And there are multiple spheres everywhere in all energy and in all force. Okay, so take a deep breath, and we're going to experience the 7 rays as conical shells, but starting from the center, imagining that all of this is in a state of movement, a mini meditation. I'm going to skip very quickly to our next animation, which follows the one we just saw, but more under the impression of the first ray rather than the second ray. But I just wanted to stop briefly with this quote from the Tibetan. And anybody who wants to go back and read the entirety of it, you all know it's available at Makara. But this idea of the work of the Christ is busy invoking fire. He nurtures underage lives. He keeps the wheels turning. I find those fascinating, invocative sort of mantras or words of power solely on their own. Here we see similar image, and I apologize for the quality. This is not actually one that I did. I don't know who the artist is, but if anybody knows, please let us know so we can give them visibility. You have a series of fractals that we're going to be viewing rotating at high speed and lights flashing forth. DK has also said then when two or more energies come together, overlap or blend, initiation occurs and there's this flashing forth. So we'll use this as our closing meditation. And if you see any particular color, draw it into your auric field and feel it bathing you like you're taking an internal shower. And then we'll discuss it for a few minutes before we close. Deep breath. Keep in mind that the dynamic of the vortex, which is an inlet and outlet, two vortices of every sphere, is how spherical lives connect with each other. They do so because they draw energy from the next higher sphere, what DK calls in the next higher ring past naught of some life. They pass it through their constitution, and then they pass it on, updated, upgraded, and purified down to the next sphere. And it's like multiple spheres all operating at the same time, like that fractal. And two things happen in rotary motion. The heavy atoms that constitute the elementals that are holding you back are thrown out. The light and the rotary motion, it spins them like when you're a child at the playground on the merry-go-round. And as you work towards the center, you find that gravity is no longer affecting you because spirituality negates gravity and it has a pull of its own, which is in the opposite direction. And so you're pulled towards the center, and in that very center, you're pulling in. You're going from centrifugal, which is throwing out, to centripetal, which is pulling in. And that's the mystery and the magic of the third ray moving into the second ray, which is cyclic spiral motion. And everything demonstrates that. And what we need to do is go from the periphery of our spherical lives into the center. It's not about creating anything. It's not even about going anywhere. It's about just feeling, intuiting into those spherical lives. Okay, excellent. We're a little over time. And Mike, if you're not tied up and BL is on a vacation, I guess we could go a few more minutes, but with your permission.
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay. Are there any comments or shares anybody would like to make? And if you have other obligations, feel free to leave.
Yeah, Michael Stacy, paradoxically, sound travels faster through liquid than through air, and faster through solids than through liquids.
Michael Stacy is always up in quantum physics because these are relatively new discoveries, and our idea of the constitution of reality, even on a physical level, is being turned upside down by so many new insights around sound and light. The idea that sound can travel faster than light, the idea that sound can boil water, that it can do healing. I mean, it's just so many things. Thank you, Michael, for that. Okay.
And then I guess maybe, let's see. The visible light is the effect of the electric fire of spirit.
Yes.
That's Anna.
Excellent,
Diana,
Anna. Thank you.
spirituality negates gravity. And time disappears during your presentation. And I guess there's this one comment Asha made, which she said she's sorry if it sounds so simplistic, but it isn't all this illusion. Michael Stacy gave an answer, but maybe you have another one. I think Michael Stacy's answer was good too, but I think if you want to add to that.
Yes, absolutely. It's all an illusion. I'm an illusion. You're an illusion. The teachings are an illusion. However, if we use them creatively, if we know to take only what we need and disregard the rest, it's a great asset and a great privilege. But it is truly an illusion. We are all an illusion waking up to reality. Thank you, Asha. Okay, any additional comments?
No other hands and no other comments.
Awesome.
I put the a recording link for everybody in there, and then the 3 other links. Artist invents a device that listens to plant music, which is really cool. And
Awesome.
then the Natasha link, and then Mount Angela I put up again. And all of that with the charts and all of these videos separated out will be available at that Makara link.
Excellent.
And Rose has her hand up.
Hi,
You're
can you
on,
hear me
Rose.
okay?
I can hear you very well.
Okay, just the last comment about all is an illusion just sparked me to have to raise my hand. Uh, um, because it's something I've thought about so much. And is it not the differentiation is the illusion? Because the unitive oneness that is just the isness of everything is like the only reality, but everything that gets into time, gets into space, gets into particulars, gets into the objective relative, but that's always relative to anything outside of, I guess, Brahman is the illusion. So it's sort of like all of a manifestation on multiple levels, because we can't just say the physical manifestation is the illusion, but, so anyway, that's all.
Yes, excellent. That's a great point. And they say that when you reach the highest level, there's nobody there to share with because your personality has been absorbed into pralaya, as Greg eloquently outlined. So anybody who's coming down the road claiming they're Christ or the Buddha might need to reevaluate. Okay, well, excellent. Well, thank you all for taking time to come and be a part of this. Your participation is what makes this. And all these little crumbs that I present are really alluding to your banquet, your revelation, your flowering forth. And it is a real joy and a real privilege to be a part of that in some small way. So thank you all. I send my love and blessings.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.